Welcome back to my next video. Today I'm going to give you the key tips to help you with your reading vocabulary. How can you improve your reading vocabulary bit by bit? Well, let's start with the paid method. You can buy B1 vocab books, and that is an obvious solution. If you work your way through a B1 vocabulary book like the examples we can see here, this will definitely improve your vocabulary. All right, you're paying probably 20 euros, 19, 18 pounds, maybe a little bit more for a book, but it's definitely worth it because you can write on that book. Now, I'm not saying there are other ways of getting books. You can borrow them from a friend. You can find them through other means. No, maybe your friend has a book and he can give you some photocopies. Maybe you have a special way of obtaining these books through means which I should not really promote. But there are ways to get books, quality books for free. So you can do that too. Now, once you've got your B1 vocab book, and I do recommend this, I also recommend that you print it, because then you've got your book and you can write your answers in and you can see your answers and you can review them. Which brings me to a key point: review. If you want to improve your vocabulary, it is not enough to see a word 2 or 3 times and then move on and forget about it. The brain does not work that way. You need to see vocabulary over and over to assimilate it. What does that mean when you are trying to increase your vocabulary? It means that you always need to be reviewing the vocabulary that you've seen. Now, there's an easy way around this. You should keep a notebook. Some people like paper notebooks. They like to write down their new vocabulary in the notebook and then go through it, review, go back. Some people like to do it on the computer. Personally, I like a paper notebook because I work with the computer a lot. You know, I get square eyes after a while from looking at a computer screen. So if I'm doing language study, you know, whether it's Spanish or Portuguese or French, and I want to review, I like a notebook. But for me, this is essential. Take time to review your vocabulary. Yeah, keep a notebook of new vocabulary. Of course, if you are very tech savvy, in other words, you're technologically minded, you're probably using apps on your phone which can enable you to repeatedly see vocabulary. And basically these apps do that. They enable you to review vocabulary and assimilate it better. Something else that apps do, but that we can do manually, is we can pick the vocabulary that we have trouble remembering. Let's take a phrasal verb that is a B1 phrasal verb, give up. All right, we know that give is, give something to someone, and up is this direction. But if we put give up together, it has a new meaning and it means stop. All right, I want to give up smoking, or I want to give up chocolate. In other words, I want to stop smoking, I want to stop chocolate. Now, phrasal verbs are quite often difficult to remember. So you may want to write a note of this phrasal verb, write some examples like I want to give up chocolate, I want to give up smoking. And this is something that if you are having difficulty remembering, review more often. Now, you know, I'm a little bit older than some, a bit younger than others. And when I was preparing for my exams, I used to do flashcards. I used to write the words on a flashcard with some context and a sentence. I would put the word there, okay, maybe give up, and I'd have an example on the other side and the meaning. And I would test myself with the flashcards. Give up. Okay, turn over. This means stop. An example, I want to give up smoking. Yeah, that's the old school method. So I'll give you an example of 3 flashcards. Now I'm going to use my screen because it's nice and easy. We've got give up, which is stop. We've got take up, which is start a hobby. And we've got set up, which we use to start a company. 3 classic B1 phrasal verbs. So we're going to rotate them. Yeah, we'll just see the verb one side, give up. Okay, give up means stop. An example, I want to give up smoking. Switch over, there we can see it. Next one, take up. Take up means start, but we use this for a hobby. So I would like to take up skiing, or I would like to take up surfing. Yeah. Switch over, have a look. We've got our examples there. We use set up. Okay, set up means start, but normally with a business. So I want to set up a business. I'm an entrepreneur, or I want to set up a new company. Yeah, and we're going to rotate those and rotate those until we have them committed to memory. You're practicing reading, right? Well, the obvious answer is to read. Yeah, there's no substitute for practicing the skill that you want to develop. Okay, by doing it. Yeah. Now, I think we need to be selective here, because you want to pass the B1 exam. You're not trying to pass the C2 exam, and you're not trying to pass the A1 exam. So in terms of the material that you select to develop your reading, you want to aim for between B1 and B2, not C2 and not A1. A1 is basic sentences, very basic reading, which is no good to you because it's not going to give you the kind of vocabulary that you need. C2, which is basically native level text, literature, newspapers, might be a bit too difficult for you, and you're going to spend your time looking at the dictionary every 5 seconds. You're going to get caught up in the text. You're going to see a lot of words that will not be in the B1 exam, so that's a waste of time. On the other hand, you're looking for B1 text. A lot of people say to me, you know, B1 text, where do I find B1 text? I can't read the newspaper, I can't read books, because that's all C1, C2, that's too difficult, it's not useful for me. Well, okay, this is easy. There are B1 readers. These are books which have had the level lowered down to about your level. So you've got B1 readers, you've got B2 readers. So I would recommend buying a B1 reader or acquiring one through a friend or a copy or something, but get your hands on a B1 reader and go for it. Practice your reading with the B1. I like crime novels. I love reading about crime, you know, all Netflix, Narcos, Griselda, The Wire, all of these series. That's what I love. So if I'm going to practice my language, you know, I want to be interested and engaged in what I'm doing. I don't want to be bored. I don't want to be reading about stuff that I'm not interested in. You know, a rom-com or something, a romantic drama. Okay, that doesn't really interest me. Sorry guys, if you like that stuff, fair play to you. My wife does, but for me, I like a good crime novel. So I'm going to take a crime reader. If I was learning English, I might choose an Agatha Christie reader, for example. Yeah. Now, when you're reading the text, you should aim to look at the dictionary, you know, 2 or 3 times in a page. You don't need to look up every word. It's about understanding most of it. It's about trying to guess some of the vocabulary from the context as well. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next step. But read through the page. If there's some words that are essential to your understanding, look them up in a dictionary and make a note in your little notebook, which you can review for later. If, on the other hand, you've got a sentence where you've got a word and you've got other words which give you a context, try to guess that word and go on, and you've got more or less your understanding. If you can understand 80% of what you're reading, you're still going to enjoy it. So that's my tip. Now, I just mentioned guessing vocabulary from the context, and this is an absolutely key skill for your reading. Okay, if you're doing the B1 exam and you've got a good B1 level, you still may come across words which you have not seen before. Right, that's not a reason to panic. Oh, there's a word, I haven't seen it before, I'm going to fail. What am I going to do? Okay, don't freeze up. Use the context surrounding the word, the before and the after, to help you try to guess what you think the word could mean, or at least develop a rough understanding of the word. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So, let's look at this sentence. I was absolutely astonished about what I saw. I couldn't believe my eyes. Right, we've got this word astonished. If you know it already, fair play to you. But if you don't, Let's look at the words surrounding it. I was absolutely. So it's going to be kind of an extreme emotion. It's an ED word, so it's a feeling. Astonished, bored, tired, amazed. Yeah, these are ED words which express feelings. Then we look at the next sentence. I couldn't believe my eyes. Right, if I say I couldn't believe what I was seeing, there's a sense of surprise, amazement, right? So if you haven't guessed already, astonished means very surprised. Now let's look at one more sentence. Hopefully you can guess the meaning. I was running around all over the place. It was a frenetic day. There was one task after another. Right. Now the word, as you can see, is frenetic. If you know it, fair play again. I take my hat off to you. But if you don't, let's look at the context. I was running around. It was one task after another. Right. This implies a sense of busyness, madness, a sense of being stressed, pressure, things moving. Okay. And that's what frenetic is. It means things are moving very quickly. You're stressed. You're under pressure. Okay, so in summary, if you don't know a word, use the vocabulary and the ideas surrounding it to try to guess. Try and do that when you're using your readers, and try to do it in the exam if you come across a word which you don't know. And the chances are you're going to see a couple of words, because here's a secret with the reading, occasionally they throw in B2 vocabulary. So you may have studied all of your B1 vocabulary, you've done a lot of reading, but a few B2 words might go in there and you may not have seen them. So this is where this skill comes into play. Try to guess from the context. I'm going to start you off with a very important vocabulary point, because knowing your vocabulary is key. That is absolutely essential. Right, let's run through a little bit of meaning. What can you think of? What expressions can you think of which mean we are allowed or we are not allowed? Yeah, take a moment to think about that. Allowed. You are allowed to do something. You can do something. You are permitted to do something. On the other side, not allowed. You are prohibited from doing something. You are forbidden from doing something. You can't do something, and you mustn't do something. Okay, a quick recap. You know that you need to be looking at B1, B2 reading material. You're not trying to look at C2 stuff. You're not trying to read Shakespeare. That can wait a little bit until you get to that level. So you've got your British Council material, BBC English material. You've got your B1 reader. You've maybe bought a B1 book with reading inside. You've got all of your free material from the internet. Maybe you've downloaded a few things. So that's your reading. Try to keep it somewhere where you can access it easily. I mean, a lot of people just like to use their phone or their tablet, and that's great. Some people like paper, so they buy the paper book. Fine. Any of those things are good. My advice would be to develop your reading. Do it little and often. All right. You don't have to spend 8 hours on a Sunday reading. All right. If you can do 25 minutes, 4 or 5 days a week, that is enough to develop your reading. Obviously, the more the better. If you can do 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, fantastic. But a lot of people, have got other things going on in their lives. Yeah. But the key is to keep going. All right. You need to keep it going in your head. All right. That's the way the brain works. You need to keep exposing yourself to language, and it will go in. You'll find if you don't read for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be rusty. In other words, you'll be lacking practice and everything will seem more difficult. But you'll find, on the other hand, if you do a bit every day, things will get better. It will become a lot easier. So make it easy for yourself by doing a little every day, and take opportunities to do things in English where you would normally do them in your own language. So, instead of reading in the morning the newspaper in your own language, maybe have a look at BBC English instead. Take time to immerse yourself in English. If you're relaxing at night, before bed, and you like to read your book, make that your English book instead. Yeah, so you can easily switch things. Other things that some people like to do is, they turn their phone into English, so that all the language is in English, and you're learning words from that naturally. They put their computer into English, so all the vocab on the computer is in English, and all of that stuff is useful too. Some people love paper, and what they do is they select their key vocab. We've talked about some of the key vocab already in class. And they post it around their room, on their walls, okay, so they're always seeing it and it's always going in. That's great. That's like when you're in the country, you're in England, and all the vocab is on the signs and everywhere, okay? So that's really nice, a nice way to give yourself some visual stimulus, yeah? Post the stuff all over the walls and everything, yeah? Well guys, that's been my video. I hope these tips are useful for you to improve your reading. I wish you the best of luck. Little and often. Find a strategy to help you memorize vocabulary. Find something that works for you, whether you're a paper person or you like apps, you like to put paper around your room. I've tried all of these. I'm more of a paper guy myself, but find a way to continuously review your new vocabulary so it stays in your memory, and practice. Yeah, get your B1 reader, look on the British Council, BBC English. Finally, when you're reading, you don't need to know every single word. Use the surrounding words to guess the context, and this will really help you for the reading exam.